Taking you live now to a press conference with Shadow Health Minister Chris Bowen. Let's take a look. And Kristina Keneally here.
We passed the stimulus package quickly, even though we had reservations about the urgency or the lack of urgency in the stimulus package, and that the help was going to get where it was needed most. We have worked with the government to support their health messaging, even as we have called for more to be done and more to be done more quickly. But when we look back at this coronavirus crisis, we will see that the Ruby Princess cruise ship is a tipping point. Let's understand what this one ship has brought to Australia's shores. We have now 133 passengers and counting from the Ruby Princess cruise ship that have tested positive for coronavirus. The Ruby Princess cruise ship coronavirus cases account for 10% of the cases in New South Wales. And quite tragically, there has already been one death. Now, on the 15th of March, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, announced to the Australian public, and I quote, "The Australian government will also ban cruise ships from foreign ports arriving at Australian ports." Those were the Prime Minister's words. He looked the nation in the eye and said there will be no more cruise ships. Except there was. There was another cruise ship, the Ruby Princess. It disembarked 2,700 people just 4 days after the Prime Minister made that statement. Just 4 days later, 2,700 people disembarked that cruise ship, and now we have seen the disastrous results. As I said, 133 passengers and counting already tested positive. And as these people got off these cruise ships, they spread right across the country. They went into taxis and public transport. They took domestic flights. They interacted with friends and neighbours. They went to shops. Yes, they were directed to self-isolate, but they were allowed to travel freely across the country. It is gobsmacking that we are in this circumstance today. The Prime Minister said he would stop the cruise ships. He did not stop the cruise ships. And we need to ask, we need to demand how this happened, and we need to ensure that it does not happen again. The Australian government needs to get on top of this situation very quickly. We see today the Australian Border Force out speaking to their actions around the cruise ship. I see that the commander, Michael Outram of the Australian Border Force, has said that the operation was successful. Well, the operation might have been successful, but the patient has died. The reality is people were allowed to get off a cruise ship. The border security measures that the Commonwealth government put in place failed the Australian people. And it does need to be asked, what is the advice the Australian Border Force is getting from the Commonwealth? The Australian Border Force are not doctors. They implement the health advice they are provided. And just like the Australian people, the Australian Border Force are getting mixed messages when it comes to the steps they should take to protect Australians' health and their lives. So the Commonwealth needs to sort this fast. My colleague Chris is exactly right. There is one simple message that needs to be delivered by the Australian government, and that is this: the more people who stay at home, the fewer people will die. And when it comes to our borders, the Minister for Home Affairs, Peter Dutton, and the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, need to get control of our borders today to ensure we do not have another calamitous arrival as we have seen with the Ruby Princess.